For major studios, horror movies have usually been low-risk, easy profit. With some exceptions, they've just been made to pay the bills. 1973's The Exorcist was made by a couple of men named Bill, and rather than make something slapdash and crude, they crafted a masterpiece with something serious to say. William Peter Blatty's novel was a runaway success from the very beginning. Published in 1971, it has sold more than 13 million copies. It's not much of an exaggeration to say that, like Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House had done a decade earlier, The Exorcist revitalized horror in literature. It modernized it. William Friedkin's film, based on Blatty's screenplay, had some deviations from the novel, but it retained the key thematics and staged them with expert precision. What the novel began, the movie completed. The Exorcist gave birth to a whole new generation of horror fans. But why? As we've discussed before, all forms of drama rely on shared experiences between the storyteller and the viewer in order to create emotional stakes for the audience. In horror, filmmakers use a tool called dark mirroring to bridge extremely exaggerated situations with more common, everyday fears. In the case of The Exorcist, Blatty and Friedkin expand this far beyond the mortgage payment fears of the Amityville Horror or the coming-of-age terrors of Carrie. They go after a far grander target, mankind's oldest theological question, the problem of evil. Put simply, the problem of evil goes like this. How can a God that is good allow evil to exist? Probably just as difficult a question, how can a horror filmmaker possibly hope to take on such a lofty subject? You won't find the answer in scenes of spinning heads, pea soup, projectile vomit, or crab walks down staircases. Instead, you'll need to take a look at a few early scenes where a quieter but much more real horror is being subtly revealed. The Exorcist rephrases the question of evil this way. Why would a father abandon his children? Almost immediately after we meet Regan McNeil and her mother, Chris, we realize that Regan's father has abandoned the family. It's also important to notice that while we see Father Karras mourn the death of his mother, there's no mention of his biological father. It seems this film is populated exclusively by fatherless characters. Of course, what it's really establishing is that we are all separated from God, the Father. We are all orphans. To religious viewers, this of course has a more profound meaning, but people of all faiths, and atheists as well, can easily still embrace the concept. After all, the 24-hour news broadcast channels are filled with evil, and not a lot of good. We overhear Chris talking about Regan's father not calling her on her birthday, saying he just doesn't give a shit. She's talking about her ex-husband, yes, but also about God. Later, she confirms to Father Karras that she's agnostic, but this seems closer to the truth, that she believes in God but sees no evidence for him, which has led her to believe that he doesn't care about his creations. For Regan, there's more than just a simple abandonment at play here. Watch closely how warmly she interacts with the women in her life, her mother, her tutor Sharon, and contrast that to how she regards the men that surround her. Burke Dennings, the psychiatrists, the doctors, the priests. She views men with suspicion. When Chris tells her that she and Burke are just friends, she responds, "That's not what I hear." Why? Think for a moment about how Regan's possession takes form. From the obscenities she shouts at the doctors, to the manner in which she assaults her psychiatrist, to, of course, the crucifix scene. Regan's illness is always presented as sexual. There's no easy way to say this, but Regan is the victim of unrecognized sexual assault, most likely by her father. Her possession isn't demonic in a biblical sense, but it is demonic. Flashback to that statue of Pazuzu that Father Marin faces in the Iraqi desert, the exaggerated phallus. Rape is an ancient evil. Meanwhile, Father Karras struggles with his faith after his mother's death. We're told it was days before she was found. He struggles with guilt. In a dream, she asks him, "Why, Dimmy, why?" He has no answers. He, like Regan, has been abandoned by his father, the spiritual one in this case, and cannot reconcile the state of the world with a God that is good. Burke Dennings dies off screen. This happens for a reason. A character even asks what he would have been doing in Regan's room at night. The viewer is spared an answer, but Burke's not given any reprieve. His head is found twisted completely around, facing backwards. Now, with what we're discussing, how might that have happened? It doesn't take a lot of imagination. At the film's conclusion, Father Karras accepts the demonic force into himself to free Regan of his influence. For a brief moment, we are given an image from inside of Karras, of his hands reaching for the young girl on the floor in a nightgown. This is the exclamation point to the sentence we've been building for the entire running time. But Karras rejects this instinct, thankfully, and instead throws himself in the same window that Burke Dennings fell. And there is the answer to the problem of evil. In order to quell the demons of this world, the good must sacrifice themselves to protect the innocent. This reflects the story of Jesus' sacrifice. It also explains God's absence from the deeds we see on the 24-hour news broadcast. Putting religion aside, The Exorcist implores us to be good men, to sacrifice our own desires for the betterment of humanity and to protect the innocent. And that, no matter what you believe, is genuinely great advice.
Thank you.